Om Shanti. And good evening to everyone. And before I go on, perhaps I should ask, is everyone able to hear? Does everyone know Portuguese? Is there no Spanish also? Is there a translator up there? Is there Patricia? She's just come, okay. Baba describes the time in which we're living as the time of suddenly. And I think if I'm right, there's hardly a Murli that we've listened to over the last year or two where Baba in different ways has described this time in which we live, this very uncertain time. And I remember coming back from Madhaban, I think it was not last year, but even in 2008 perhaps, at the end of 2008, and thinking that after what Baba was saying, that what's happening, fairly constant, wonderful dialogue, constant dialogue in the family, I began to think that suddenly is not only the upheavals out there, it's also the upheavals internally. And it almost seems like we're at a time in the cycle where the accounts are coming quite quickly, and things can emerge inside the self very fast. Powerful feelings, powerful emotions that sometimes not sure how to deal with. And so firstly, there's the suddenly of the upheavals out. Suddenly, I can take a high jump in my journey. It seems that everything is moving fast. The time is moving fast. The accounts are moving fast. But also the opportunity to really step up to a new level, I think, is also happening. What do you feel? Do you feel it's that time? I think it is. Thank you, a few people. I feel it is. And for me, one of the things which I have felt for quite some time is the way to move forward, the way to make that step up, that step into something which we know. I often feel we can feel it inside. It's like my part is laid out in my memory track. My future is invoking me to step up to a new level. And what I feel is it's all built around cleanliness in my feelings, purity in my feelings, and keeping these really clean feelings internally. And sometimes when I reflect on, Baba as our teacher, Baba the supreme teacher, I think in his wisdom, Baba, when he first came in the 1930s, this is very general, he began to teach about purity in action. And he began to teach to stop the cycle of negativity and unhappiness, to break the cycle by performing pure actions, and stop the actions of anger, etc. And it seemed to me that around the time Baba became Avyakt, and I'm sure before, but especially at that time, Baba began to then teach more about purity in thought. Shall I say the karma of our thinking? And that when we generate certain types of waste or negative thoughts, the karmic effect is we lose our peace and happiness. When I generate critical thinking, what happens? I lose the love from the hearts of others. There's a definite response. But especially I felt over the last quite a few years that Baba's been talking a lot about purity in feelings, and if I can almost call it the karmic effect of our feelings. Because my own personal experience, and I think most of us is that the millisecond I generate a negative feeling, a hurt feeling, a bad feeling, an ill feeling, what happens to your stage? What happens to your spirituality? It's instant. It's even faster than time that my stage completely drops. And I think that, when I begin to understand the wisdom of feelings and why Baba is constantly, telling us children have good feelings, have pure. It's not just to do with my relationships, it's actually to do with my own stage and my own personal experience. And when I look at the cycle, I love to sort of watch the journey of the soul through the cycle. Sometimes I think our journey, our stage is so connected to our relationships. We're the souls that have been on the family path. We have known purity in relationships for half the cycle. But when we reach this point track, we have etched into our subconscious the whole spectrum of feelings gained through our experience of relationships. In other words, we have the feelings, and we've all experienced them, of so much love, such deep, rich, loving feelings, such benevolent feelings, such merciful feelings. We all know them. But we know the other end of the spectrum too, I think, don't we? The ability to feel so deeply hurt, so disappointed, so sometimes hopeless, the other end of the spectrum. And it's like all those feelings are laid out in the subconscious of the soul. And most of those feelings, I think, have been imprinted on the basis of our relationships through the cycle. And so what happens at this time, I think many of us, we come to Baba. We recognize, Baba, this is my truth and this is where I belong. This is what I want to achieve. I want to become a pure soul. And I know that's such a fundamental feeling that we have inside. But between me and that state seems to be this whole account of negative feelings that have been built up on the basis of relationships. And you think about it, sometimes I think that, whenever you interact with somebody, what that person does, their vibration, their face, their words, all these subtle things trigger things in me, don't they? They trigger, they unlock little memories that are sitting inside me that have been etched in my memory track in the past. And so feelings flow into my mind in an instant, as I say, even faster than time. Feelings sometimes loving, but sometimes hurt. And it seems that, we're dancing to the tune of these feelings which seem to come so strongly inside of me. And I often feel that when another soul becomes an instrument to trigger something in me, this is really where I can see, am I a Gyani soul or am I a non-Gyani soul? I really believe the soul who has really got deep knowledge inside really begins to see, well, why did that feeling emerge? Why did that feeling, what was that in that soul that triggered this in me? What's in my soul, that was triggered? But when I don't have knowledge, I fall back into the old pattern of projecting onto that other person and feeling, you've hurt me, you've upset me. And even many of us, so many years on this journey, we fall back into that pattern. And what I feel is that, in a sense, relationships reveal to me what's really deep inside the soul. Because things will be triggered. And this is the purpose. Sometimes I think the whole role of the Brahman family can be to reveal what is latent inside the soul. And once again, if I have knowledge, I use it as a wonderful tool to understand what I'm carrying. But if I don't have knowledge, I get very disturbed, I get very upset, I blame, and we know those all those feelings and all those emotions that can emerge. And it just seems to me that, all these things are sitting in the soul. And I heard once someone say that the essence of relationship is communication, and the essence of communication is feelings. And I can remember many years ago in Australia, there was a group of actors, BK actors, who were putting on a play, and someone came to speak to them, a director, I think, just about their performance. And I remember one thing he said, which is, really common knowledge. And he said that actually, the real power of the performance is in the feelings you generate. And I remember him saying that in any communication or any relationship, that up to 80 to 90% of the impact is non-verbal. In other words, our facial expressions and the feelings, the vibes that we generate are actually the real impact on another. And when people get two messages from me, one is what they hear and one is what they feel. When you get those two messages, what do you trust? You will always trust your feelings. And I've always found that a really interesting thing, because sometimes, in this journey, relationships are incredibly important. Can you have good yoga if you're having conflict with somebody? Where does your thoughts go? And sometimes we sit there wondering, we start to wonder why I can't get on with somebody, why I can't have a good relationship. Honestly, my feeling is check my own feelings, because often stored, if I can say, in the back of my mind is a whole series of things. It can be judgments, it can be assumptions, it can be those, holding that person's defects. It can even be the history of my interaction. You know how we carry things, and it's like a subtle filter. And I'm looking at you through this filter, and therefore you don't get those clean feelings, you don't get those pure feelings. And so you don't really have that real sense of closeness or belonging. One of the words I love most in this life is that word belonging. I just, sometimes I even think that when Baba comes, the way he talks to us, it's almost like he's just creating such strong feelings of belonging, because for such a long time the souls felt disconnected. And I think that, when we begin to see the effect of, my communication and what I hold in my mind, I start to take responsibility and experiment even in trying to improve the grade, the quality of not just my thinking, but my feeling. I have this image sometimes that, we've got these little thought factories inside, you know what I mean? It's incredible, really. It's just constantly, we're all sitting here quietly in this hall. There's, I don't know how many hundreds of us, and yet each one is generating these little thoughts. And actually my attitude projects it into the atmosphere. And that's what actually, my attitude projects those feelings which other people pick up. And I think that, this is the journey in this life really, is because, as we often hear, that we want to close the gap between what I know and what I feel. We can know the knowledge so easily. And recently I've been thinking a lot about the difference between an intellectual understanding and really a spiritual understanding, where in a way the understanding seeps into my feelings. I can know the knowledge in a week. Some people have taught it within a few weeks to others. But how long does it take to transform a knowing into a feeling? We hear every day, children give love and respect to absolutely everyone, and we believe that. We all hold that as a truth in my life. And yet, how long does it really take for that to seep into my feelings so that my understanding in my intellect equals my understanding in my feelings? And I think, I don't know about your experience, but I think it is the great patience of this journey, isn't it? To sort of bring the understanding, what I know here, really into my feelings. I can remember when I first started, I loved the knowledge of drama. You know, it just resonated so deeply that we're in a play and we're all actors. And I can remember sometimes being in scenes, you know, and something was going wrong and I'd be saying, you know, oh, it's drama, and my heart's going boom, 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 and, you know, my knees are shaking, I was nervous, you know. It's like I intellectually understood it was drama, but it hadn't really seeped more deeply into my understanding. And sometimes I think it's the understanding of knowledge, the study that transforms my intellect, my understanding, but it's yoga that begins to transform my feelings inside. And I remember a few years ago, Baba said something that really touched me, and you know how just Baba says something so simple, but it really hit home for me. And Baba just said that children, right is right and wrong is wrong, but don't bring it into your feelings. Do you remember when Baba said that? And only recently I was feeling that that's probably the best description of a detached observer I've ever heard. It's a wonderful description, really, of what a detached observer is. You do see everything going on. It's not that you're naive to the dynamics of interactions or what's going on, but you choose not to generate a hurt feeling or an ill feeling as a result. And many times I've thought about it. Why is it that when I hear so many times, Baba says, to have good feelings, to have pure feelings, that I still get disturbed or get upset or react when Baba tells me so many times? And you know, one of the things which I've felt is that my sense of justice deceives me, in the sense that I see something which I think is not right behavior. I measure it against Baba's Srimat. I see something wrong or I see something bad. In my perception, this is not right. And so my sense of justice kicks in and it cancels out my understanding of knowledge. And I feel I have a right to generate wrong feeling because you've behaved badly. And yet, what I remember, even Baba saying on a number of occasions, that the other person made a mistake. But in you reacting, you've also made a mistake too. And, you know, I feel many times this trap, it's a trap. My sense of justice kicks in, my judgmental self. And so I justify perhaps my bad behavior. And yet Baba is really saying, children, try to generate good wishes and pure feelings, you know, really regardless of the situation which is happening around me. And I remember a muli, an Avyakt muli, which was revised about a year or so ago. I'm not very good at dates. But in that muli, Baba was talking about, he said, create certain feelings and you'll become an angel. You know how certain mulis really touch you. And what I remember was Baba said, children, the whole ascent going up in this life and the whole descent in this life is based on feelings. And what Baba said, he said that if you actually keep 5 types of feelings inside, you'll become an angel. And I've often sort of thought of them as like the myriads of feelings. If I keep my inner world inside these feelings, it almost is a natural way of moving forward because it's not stained by those impure feelings. And Baba, if I remember, the first was the feelings of benevolence for everyone. The second was the feelings of love and cooperation. The third were the feelings of zeal and enthusiasm. The fourth were the feelings of belonging. And the fifth were the feelings of soul consciousness. And it was like Baba was saying, children, if you sustain yourself in those feelings, it's almost like that's the work, and automatically the soul will become like an angel. And Baba then went on to say in that Murli that you just make, the reason any obstacle comes is you just make one mistake. When you change loving feelings into other feelings. And you think about it, whenever you have an obstacle, just look what feelings have come inside. Almost always you've begun to generate some sort of negative, hurt, ill, whatever feeling it is. And that begins to distort what happens. You think, let's say someone behaves badly, or I lose trust for somebody. And when you lose trust, those feelings of trust, no matter what that person does, you look for some funny motive, You look for some, what are they up to now? It's like when you lose those trust, your feelings change from loving feelings to, not trusting. You start to look at what they're doing, some sinister motive, something is going on inside. And so I think that, these feelings, to keep inside those pure feelings, I feel is really what our study is at the moment. And I always personally feel we have a choice. We do have a choice. Yes, there's no doubt we have the habit of, generating those feelings. But when I really understand that probably the main way to, sustain myself is to keep my feelings inside light, pure, clean. And I choose to generate those feelings. Because what is the process? What's the process that creates feelings inside? The soul sits here on the throne in the forehead, and the soul's connected to the five senses. And it's almost like, we walk down the road and we meet an old friend, just say, and as soon as we meet that person, it triggers feelings inside me. Feelings of our past connection, our past relationship. I walk a bit further, I hear music. You know how a song can instantly trigger a memory or a feeling from the past? I walk a bit further, I smell something. It triggers something. I see people arguing, that triggers a feeling. What's happening is that the outside world is controlling how I feel inside. All I'm doing is reacting to this. And in a sense, I'm a slave. This is really gross body consciousness, is that the world just triggers and I just respond. And so I go up and down, up and down. When I come to Baba, it's like Baba then teaches me to go internally and link with Baba. And often I describe yoga as just plugging into a ball, if I can say, of pure feelings. Baba is this ocean of pure and clean feelings of love and purity, and I plug into that. And it starts to, that connection with Baba starts to generate different feelings. Yes, I taste those feelings of Baba, but I still, am affected by the world. And so both things are happening. I'm feeling the feelings from Baba, the pure feelings, but I'm still reacting to the world. The more I remember Baba, it's like the more Baba is influencing my feelings. Yoga transforms my feelings, and the less my feelings are being triggered or controlled by personalities, situations, and people outside of me. And I think that change, starts to bring stability, because rather than being a victim of my feelings, I'm starting to create more the feelings that I want. It is a process, there's no doubt. I remember years ago, one of the mulis which I really loved was when Baba was meeting a huge group of mothers. And do you remember one season there was, we were meeting in different groups, and there was something like, I forget, 15,000 mothers. It was amazing. And I remember so well that muli. It really touched me, because Baba said, what is the easiest effort? In fact, he said, who likes easy efforts? In fact, who here likes easy efforts? I do. I'm certainly one who likes the easy path. And Baba just said, while moving and walking around, while interacting with everyone, just have good wishes and pure feelings. And then Baba went on to say that if someone has bad feelings for you, it doesn't matter. You just generate, you just have good wishes for them and transform their bad feelings. But what Baba then said really struck me. He said, if you do this one effort of keeping your feelings clean, regardless of what's coming towards you, you will become complete and you will change the world. How powerful is it when we realize the power of those elevated thoughts and feelings inside, and that rather than always bowing down to the situations externally and giving away my pure feelings, I start to say, no, I'm going to keep these feelings. You can behave in that way, that's your part in the drama, but I'm not going to surrender my pure feelings, because they sustain me and they make me, feel good inside. I even remember listening to, studying each season. Usually I often make notes of what Baba is saying. And I saw some language, year after year, regularly there was this language which was translated in English. No matter what someone is like, you must have good wishes and pure feelings. No matter if someone even opposes you, you must have good wishes and pure feelings. No matter, who you're with, you must give them love, not superficial love, but true love. It was like Baba kept using that language, no matter, no matter, no matter. In Baba's world, there's no excuse. In that sense, he's trying to encourage us. And I even remember he was saying, and you might remember this a few years ago, that if you're in touch with someone, as Baba's language was, and they're fluctuating 95% and they're stable 5%, what do you focus on? The 5%. I mean, our teacher sets a pretty high standard. And yet we all know that is right. We all know that's the truth. Meaning that if someone's sort of 95% negative but 5% positive, focus on that 5% positive. And Baba takes us to such a high standard in this way. And so we say, okay, Baba, I'm going to try. I believe that this is right. I'm going to really have these pure feelings. And we experiment. And all of us have a few people in our life that seem to trigger those other feelings. And I think the drama is almost organized in that way, because it helps us transform. So we say, okay, Baba, I'm going to give it a go. We try and nothing changes. Have you had that experience? And you go back to Baba and you say, Baba, I've tried, but it just doesn't work, And I've looked at these myself, because I've experimented quite a bit in this way. And sometimes it works well and sometimes it doesn't, because sometimes I feel that our feelings are patronizing. They're patronizing, a bit patronizing the good feelings. At the back of my mind there's this feeling, well, you really are a bit of a case, but don't worry, I'll have good wishes for you, that sort of thing. You're a real problem, but don't worry, I'm having good wishes for you. It's like, actually those good wishes don't work so well. They don't connect, they don't really change. Or even the thought, what I've noticed, we want to change the dynamic in a relationship. Good wishes is the method, but still it doesn't work. And you know what I've really felt? The seed of my thinking sometimes is still the thought. If there's been some difference with another, the seed is that I am right, and you are wrong. I'm still going to have good wishes for you, but still I hold on that I am right. I remember a few years ago, Baba defined ego as the thought, that I am right in that way. So when that seed of ego is there, also, it's like the power of those, it's like the intellect's trying to generate good thoughts, but still I'm holding some other feelings, and still people are feeling that. They're not as clean as they could be. And even one thing which Daddy Janki mentions sometimes is, the memory track. How, I love that language actually, how all the scenes of my past are laid out in my memory track. And when I come in front of you, the wonder of the human soul is that a lot of the scenes of my interaction with you come up into my mind. So I carry the history of my relationship with you. And sometimes looking through that filter, if it hasn't been so good, once again, people don't get those cleanliness of feelings. And I think that, to me, good wishes and pure feelings are so important as a part of our spiritual transformation. And one of the things I feel most, why Baba is always suggesting this, is it's not only to transform relationships, it's probably more about me. Because what really happens is if you think to generate goodwill, to generate pure feelings, I've got to go to a place in my sanskaras that's clean. I've got to go to a place that's clean and elevated. And so each time I generate goodwill, I strengthen that clean part, I strengthen my own purity. That's what I really feel. On the other hand, each time I generate hurt feelings, I sustain my own my old story, My old story of feeling hurt, my old story of feeling it's unfair. Each time I go to that place, I'm strengthening my impurity. It's almost like, on the one hand, I'm making effort to go forward, but on the other hand, I keep generating these old feelings, and so I remain stuck in a place of hurt feeling, which I can't extract myself out of. And it's almost like I begin to learn that even if you behave in a way that I don't approve of, I've made a decision I'm not going to generate hurt feelings. And in fact, probably the way we can describe what is soul consciousness and what is body consciousness. In body consciousness, I see a scene, I see some behaviors. If they're not so good, I generate hurt feelings, bad feelings. In soul consciousness, I see the same scene, I understand the same things, but I choose to generate mercy or goodwill, or even I just choose to observe the scene rather than generate those old feelings. And so, to me, it's essential for my own spiritual progress, because if I constantly keep going back and pointing the finger and blaming you that you did this, and I go and I keep reinforcing this place of hurt inside, it's just I keep the old wound open. I'm not healing. And I can't blame them, they're just the instrument. And yet, even many years in Gyan, we still do that. And that's where I think when Baba keeps saying, if my mind is constantly, having pure feelings, then it's cleaning away the habit of dipping into that old pool of tamo pradhan sanskaras. Often the way I think of service, why is service so important? The main sanskara we end up at the end of the cycle is taking, absorbing, being influenced by, the things especially people and relationships. What I love about service is that, you know, even you look at someone like Daddy this morning, and she just goes from this meeting with this group to this class to this, you know, and in every scene, giving, 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 giving. And the more you give, a few things happen. The less your ability to take hurt, to take sorrow. And the more you give good wishes, of course, those good wishes are returned to you, you know. I remember Daddy G, so many times I heard her say that she's so careful in the way she conducts herself so she doesn't lose the goodwill from the hearts of the Brahmin family. Because that's a treasure. That's something, when we win the goodwill of the family, it's a great power in my life. But I have to, behave in an elevated way to be able to win that goodwill. So firstly, I think these pure feelings are so important for, my own spiritual progress, so that I don't keep sustaining that body-conscious part of myself, dipping into that place. Secondly, I would say they're essential for yoga. If you really reflect when you meditate, I don't know whether you really observe when you sit down to meditate what does happen. Sometimes I think we spend a lot of our time processing our life. How much we do remember Baba, but sometimes there's, a little bit of remembrance. But when you're busy, you've got a lot to do, and you don't have time to sort out how you feel. So when you sit in silence, it almost becomes a habit to start to process how I felt about what happened and what you said and what was going on. And so it's almost like we get stuck in the gravity of these subtle, almost mental accounts with other souls, thinking about them, sorting through my feelings. There's no doubt at some point we have to process our feelings, but it's best not, when we're meditating. And I think that it's like a gravity that, I want to go higher and absorb myself in Baba. But sometimes we get stuck in the gravity of these subtle karmas, these mental karmas, with the Brahmin family, with certain souls, processing how I feel, and often dipping into that well of hurt once again and reinforcing that. And what I think is that good feelings, pure feelings, begin to clear that account. And the more I have those good feelings, it actually enables me to remember Baba. Unless I have those good feelings in place, I get stuck in processing the other feelings. And it can almost become a habit to sit in meditation and process the story of what's going on in my life. But ultimately, I think that I feel pure feelings are definitely the bedrock that builds long-term healthy relationships. And not only that if I have the courage to, if a relationship isn't so healthy, and have you ever had the experience that you try to sort it out verbally, but it doesn't really work? In fact, it often makes it worse. Ever had that experience? Sometimes just doing that work and that honesty with myself, that what is the seed? Is the seed still that I think you're a bit of a problem? The seed still that sort of attitude? Or am I really stepping back and making a decision that I don't want my yoga to go in that direction, so I'm going to really learn how to have clean feelings, clear this account through the power of my elevated feelings. And I really do feel in time it can change. And I met one person in Australia, and he was telling me that he had a long-term friend, and they had a huge falling out. And they hadn't spoken for 10 years. And he began to meditate. And when you start Brahman life, you want to clear up the unfinished business of your past, things which you regret. And he knew he couldn't ring this person. It was that difficult. And so he began to experiment with goodwill, and he really said, I really try to forgive honestly and not feel that I am right and he is wrong, that's the thing, but really forgive. And he then spoke, after some time, he spoke to a third person who was a mutual friend and said, please tell him I'd like to speak to him. And this person was totally open, and they spoke, and it was like so much changed. And he felt though he did the groundwork, you know, it was the groundwork of generating or pouring those feelings, of changing his own feelings. It did the groundwork to bring change in that relationship. And I think in one of the mulis of this season, one of the things which I really loved was the muli about faith. Do you remember the 4 types of faith? And do you remember the type of faith which we were weakest in? It was actually having faith in the family. It was interesting, wasn't it? Faith in Baba, faith in the self. What was the third one? Drama. Thank you. And the fourth one was, you know, faith in the family. And that's a really interesting one. And, you know, I've been thinking that it's a choice I can make. Actually, each one of us has a set of strengths and a set of weaknesses. And each one of us is living in a place with different personalities, each holding strengths and weaknesses. And I've been thinking it's almost like I'm going to choose to have faith in you, because actually other people aren't going to come along. Sometimes we think, I hope maybe there'll be a new centre in charge or a new national coordinator or something, you know, if I'm having some challenges there. But that's not going to happen. And it's almost like, you know, Baba knows all of us. He knows all our strengths and weaknesses, but Baba chooses to have faith in each one of us. And Baba's faith in us gives us so much power. And even, you know, if you see how, if even one of the seniors has faith in us, how much strength you get from that. And I've been thinking, it's like a choice. You know, I can choose to focus on your strengths and actually invest faith in you. And I would say it's probably the most powerful quality of an instrument soul, to train themselves to have faith. Because I don't think the family, it's not that there's suddenly a different family who come. This is the family I'm with. These are the souls I'm going to interact with in the confluence age. So I can doubt. And if I have doubt, it will generate all sorts of negative feelings, create all sorts of conflict. But if I really invest faith, I make a choice. Yes, you may have this weakness, but you have this strength. And sometimes, you know, I've thought about the souls Baba chooses as instruments. And I think there's a few sanskaras that Baba seems to love. And one of those sanskaras, the first sanskara I often think is to have all relationships with one Baba. Because that wins Baba's trust. Baba knows he's the main influence on the soul. And the second is that, you know, Baba is doing, I'm just the instrument, you know, removing myself from the I stuff. Baba seems to love those two sanskaras. The soul might have a lot of other weaknesses, but Baba sees a few sanskaras which are really special, and that's the foundation that Baba sort of gives that soul responsibility in that way. So I think that, you know, it's definitely something which I feel is really important in my Brahman life, to educate myself, to know what's good in people, and to generate pure feelings on the basis of that. Because if I get stuck in people's defects, if I get stuck in hurt and all that stuff, it's like I feel I'm not getting anywhere spiritually. And I feel that it's the feelings which change the dynamics of relationships. Some they'll instantly change, but some, if I work at them and they're genuine, pure feelings, then it's possible to really change the dynamics in relationships. And I don't know whether you've ever had the experience that sometimes when you feel so close to Baba, you know, you feel so loved by Baba, you just feel, just let it all go. No matter what has happened, just let it go. What's the point of holding on to this history, you know, that we sometimes hold on to? Just let it go. It actually frees me and enables me to keep my mind clean and elevated, because that's really what Baba has asked us to do this time. Anyway, I did say at the beginning that there's a few minutes. We can have a few questions, or we can have a go at a few of the questions from this morning. What would you prefer? Does anyone want to ask something, or should I continue with the questions that... We only have a few minutes because we will have half an hour of meditation. So would anyone like to ask something? Well, I think I'll have a go at a few of the easier questions, and I'll leave the harder ones for Monday tomorrow. There's quite a lot of interesting questions here. One of the questions was, when I see the seniors having brought about so much expansion in service, I see the self to be nowhere. The feeling of what am I doing and what have I done so far emerges from the heart, you know, a bit of hopeless feelings. What can I do to finish this feeling and just keep moving? What can I do to take us the first step in expanding service? I think actually Daddy touched on that a lot this morning, didn't she, around expectations and so on. But, you know, one of the feelings I've had is that, you know, the Yajna's in this incredible phase of expansion and service, which is absolutely essential. But sometimes we get so caught up in the whole service and all its byproducts, in a sense, you know, the roles we play, the positions, all that sort of stuff, that often my sense of self is very much caught up in all that, rather than my own spiritual journey. Because one of the things I've learnt, which has really helped me personally, is that, you know, you get to a certain point. I think often we try to be good at everything. And I feel it's a really healthy thing when you learn what I can do okay, but actually what I'm not so good at as well, and accept that. You know, I might have specialties to do certain things. Some people just have the specialty, I think, of just being a really loving, caring family member, which I would say is such... But they're not out there giving the big talks and doing the big service, but they're such a integral family member. You know, it's a really healthy thing to know what I can do, but also accept what I can't do, because others can do that, and I feel happy that others can do that. Rather than putting pressure on myself that I have to be everything to everyone, yes, I'm quite good at this, and I know I'm good at this, and I enjoy doing this, I'm going to put energy here. I'm not so good at this, but others are also good at that. And so rather than sort of judging myself on the results of service, I think, you know, really in Baba's eyes, of course, he gives blessings for service, but I really feel that Baba sees the heart, doesn't he? He sees what's in... And I think when someone, I would say, lives in the family with love and pure feelings, I would say that soul probably get the best marks of all. You know, that soul that's always spreading those feelings in the family. I think, you know, that soul gets... I think Baba would really love... And then another question here. Baba mentioned on the January the 30th Muli that no one should complain for not having received Baba's introduction. Does it mean that we should be more clear and straightforward and say that God has come in the medium of Brahma Baba? Or does it mean that our dana should reveal Baba? I think there's perhaps many ways of looking at that question, but I personally do feel that, you know, in the size of the world, 6.7 billion people, and especially outside India where all of us are, how many souls have woken up? And I think, you know, it is our responsibility to give Baba's message. It is. But I don't mean in an evangelical way in any way. But I'm starting to feel more that when my intellect is really in tune with atmospheres, where I can really speak quite openly. But I honestly feel if I speak with genuine love and respect for the people in front, I'm not, you know, pushing or blasting in any way, but I'm really speaking, it's possible. At other times it may be just, you know, through my face and my stage, as Baba says, but I feel that sometimes there may be opportunities where we can be a lot more open. And I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel that time is coming where, you know, and really I feel that the paradox is we all know people that if we went and started to tell them what I'm really involved in, what's really happens in the Brahma Kumaris, they just say, I don't want to know about this. And they'll be the very people at that time, they're going to say, why didn't you tell me? But at the moment, they're not very open. They don't want to know. And so how do we deal with that situation? I think it's a lot to do, once again, with my dharana, my feelings. You know, once again, I think it's not so much what we say, it's the feelings behind it, and we can soften someone. And when we speak with so much love, it is possible to share, really, even if it's just my experience, what I believe to be happening here, that I really believe it's the Supreme Soul teaching, and that's the foundation of my transformation and why I'm here. Of course, we need to be very yukti-yukt and read each situation, but somehow I feel, as Baba said, the time is such that we can be a lot more open with what we're doing, and we may be surprised that people mightn't react as much as we think, especially when my feelings are in that right place. Anyway, I think it's 7 and Gopi is here, so